We live in uncertain times, folks. The world feels more unpredictable than ever, and it's hard not to feel a sense of unease. It's like the whole world is holding its breath, wondering if things are going to explode. The tension is palpable, and it's not just in the political arenas, but in our everyday lives. And when I say explode, I'm not just talking about your uncle after a chili cook-off. Though, let's be honest, that can be pretty explosive too. I'm talking about the big one, the mushroom cloud kind of explode, nuclear war, the kind of explosion that changes the world in an instant. It's a terrifying thought, and it's one that's been hanging over our heads since the dawn of the atomic age. From the Manhattan Project to the Cold War, the shadow of nuclear conflict has loomed large. But is it just a scary story we tell ourselves, or is there a real chance that the world could descend into nuclear chaos? The media often sensationalizes these threats, but the danger is real. The truth is, nobody knows for sure. The unpredictability of global politics makes it impossible to say with certainty. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be asking the question. In fact, it's more important than ever to engage in these discussions. Because if there's even a tiny chance of it happening, then it's something we need to be talking about. Public awareness and scientific discourse are crucial in addressing these threats. We need to understand the risks, the potential consequences, and most importantly, what we can do to prevent it. Diplomacy and strategic planning are our best defenses. This isn't just about politics or ideology, it's about the collective responsibility we all share. It's about the survival of our species. Our planet is a shared home, and its safety is in our hands. It's about ensuring that there's a future for our children and grandchildren. We owe it to them to create a world where they can thrive without fear. And it all starts with understanding how we got here in the first place. The history of nuclear weapons is a cautionary tale that we must heed. So, buckle up, Buttercup. This journey is not for the faint of heart. We're about to take a deep dive into the terrifying, the complex, and the surprisingly relevant history of nuclear weapons and the very real threat they pose to our world today. From the first atomic bomb to the current geopolitical tensions, we'll explore it all. To understand where we are, we need to know where we've been. And when it comes to global conflict, the 20th century was a real doozy. Twice the world plunged into the abyss of World War, leaving millions dead and entire continents in ruins. World War I, the war to end all wars, was triggered by a tangled web of alliances, nationalism, and good old-fashioned power grabs. It was a brutal, bloody affair, fought in trenches and characterized by new horrors like chemical weapons. The world had never seen anything like it, and then came World War II, even more devastating than the first. Fueled by the rise of fascism, economic instability, and the failure to learn from the mistakes of the past, it engulfed the globe in another wave of violence and destruction. These wars weren't just tragedies, they were wake-up calls. They showed us the terrible consequences of unchecked aggression, the fragility of peace, and the urgent need for international cooperation. After the horrors of World War II, the world was desperate for peace. The devastation and loss were fresh in everyone's minds, and there was a collective yearning to ensure such a catastrophe would never happen again. But instead of lasting peace, a new kind of conflict emerged: the Cold War. This was not a war fought with traditional weapons on battlefields, but a war of ideologies, espionage, and nuclear brinkmanship. It was a tense standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union, two superpowers armed with enough nuclear weapons to wipe out humanity many times over. The sheer scale of their arsenals was mind-boggling, and the potential for destruction was unprecedented. This was the era of duck-and-cover drills, of bomb shelters in backyards, of a constant low-grade fear that the world could end at any moment. Children were taught to hide under their desks, as if that could protect them from a nuclear blast. It was a time when the fate of humanity rested on a terrifying balance of power known as mutually assured destruction, or MAD. The idea was that neither side would dare to launch a first strike because it would guarantee their own destruction as well. The logic of MAD was chillingly simple. If either side launched a nuclear attack, the other would retaliate in kind, resulting in the annihilation of both. This created a precarious peace where the threat of total destruction was the only thing preventing war. It was a high-stakes game of chicken, with the survival of civilization hanging in the balance. Leaders on both sides had to navigate this delicate dance, making decisions that could either maintain the fragile peace or plunge the world into nuclear chaos. The Cold War was a time of intense paranoia, espionage, and proxy wars fought in far-flung corners of the globe. Spies and secret agents became the unsung heroes and villains of this shadowy conflict, gathering intelligence and carrying out covert operations. But it also forced the world to confront the unthinkable and ultimately led to some important steps towards nuclear disarmament. The fear of mutual destruction pushed nations to the negotiating table, resulting in treaties that aimed to reduce the nuclear threat and promote global security. The Cold War may be over, but the world is far from a peaceful place. The echoes of past conflicts still resonate, and the spectre of global tension looms large over our modern world. From Eastern Europe to the South China Sea, new tensions are simmering and old rivalries are flaring up. These regions have become flashpoints where the interests of powerful nations collide, creating a precarious balance that could tip at any moment. And in many of these hotspots, nuclear weapons are lurking in the background, casting a long shadow over already volatile situations. The presence of these weapons of mass destruction adds a layer of complexity and danger that cannot be ignored. In Ukraine, Russia's invasion has reignited fears of a wider European conflict, bringing back memories of the Cold War era. The devastation and human suffering are palpable, and the international community watches with bated breath, with NATO and Russia squaring off in a dangerous game of brinkmanship. Military drills and parades showcase their might, but also serve as stark reminders of the thin line between peace and war. The situation is a stark reminder of how quickly conflicts can escalate, often from seemingly minor incidents. History has shown us that miscalculations and misunderstandings can lead to catastrophic outcomes, and the potential for miscalculation is terrifyingly real. Diplomatic efforts are ongoing, but the tension in the air is palpable and the stakes are incredibly high. Meanwhile, in the Asia-Pacific, China's growing military might and assertive stance towards Taiwan have raised concerns about a potential clash with the United States and its allies. The region is a powder keg, with each side wary of the other's next move. With both sides possessing nuclear weapons, the stakes are incredibly high. The potential for a devastating conflict that could have global repercussions is a constant threat. And let's not forget the Middle East, a region long plagued by conflict and instability. The ongoing strife has created a complex web of alliances and enmities, making peace a distant dream. The Iranian nuclear program has been a source of international concern for years, with fears that it could spark a new arms race in the region. Diplomatic efforts have been made, but the situation remains precarious. And the potential for a regional arms race is a frightening prospect. The proliferation of advanced weaponry and the involvement of multiple nations create a volatile mix that could explode at any moment. The world watches, hoping for peace but preparing for the worst.